Hey there, thanks for pressing play. My name's Andy Last, and this is the show where I interview artists who make really kick-ass electronic music. We're talking chill wave, 80s revival, new wave, outrun, new disco, dream wave, soundtrack, synth pop, just awesome retro stuff, and a whole bunch of other cool shit. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun. I think it's gonna be pretty cool. This is Beyond Synth. And that was just a little bit of the song Sure Thing off the album Calico Brawn by Ogre. And I have Ogre on the show today, aka Robin Ogden. And we had a conversation over Skype because obviously he is in England and I record this show in Canada. So I thought I'd just take a quick second here to tell you what this show is. Because there's a lot of places on the web where you can hear the music, but I really wanted to do a profile and profile individual artists because there's this whole scene of synthwave, 80s revival music going on. It's really cool. It's been going on for a while. I am admittedly new to it, but I'm so happy that it exists. My whole life I've always, I tell people I like electronic music, but really it was sort of this scene I was sort of waiting to come back, and it's really cool. There's a lot of artists doing some really impressive music, and I'm also treating this show as sort of a learning experience for myself. I love discovering new artists doing this type of music. I love hearing what they have to say. I think we're all inspired by a particular time, and I think we could have some fun conversations, and it also gives maybe people in the synthwave community a chance to hear what the other artists are saying. I know a lot of us maybe just have relationships digitally, through Twitter or chats or something like this. I think it's a fun way to sort of get to know the people making this awesome music. And I just love this music, so it's just fun for me to meet people who are making this kind of stuff and talk to them and hopefully find more people who are making it. And that's pretty much it. So I think now we'll just go to the interview I had with the OGRE himself, Robin Ogden. I'm here with Robin Ogden, who is the man behind Ogre and Monster as well, right?
Yeah. Although it's kind of been on the back burner now for a little while.
Ogre, now, do you say that like the mythical creature?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought I originally went with the OGRE thing, but it's a bit sort of 90s hip-hop or something. But I don't know. Like, everyone else seems to say Ogre, I think. Not that I've really met anyone. I don't know, all my mates seem to say Ogre.
Are you happy about that, or...?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know, it's not really too much of an issue. I think, originally it was sort of like some sort of portmanteau of my initials, basically. Right. I thought, this sounds cool, it's got 2 syllables. I don't know. But, yeah.
I'll just start this off by saying sort of how I came across your music, because it's really cool. And so I'm going to kiss your ass for a little bit at the start here. Which is fine. It's good for anyone's ego. But yeah. When I found the whole scene on Bandcamp and stuff, and I found Calico Brawn, and I have listened to the other ones too, and they are good as well. I'm focusing on this album in particular, just because it's the first one I heard when I first discovered your music, and right off the bat with Always Outnumbered, Never Outrun, which has such a great energy to kick off the album. I think probably my favorite track is Sure Thing. I know I mentioned that to you on Twitter.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very flattered.
No, like that song, I'm not much of a dancer, but there's there's something about that song. I don't know what it is. It makes me want to move. I don't know why, but I think the reason why I love the sort of synthwave stuff so much is a lot of my favorite movies and stuff are games and things from the 80s. And so all these images kind of pop into my head. So with this one, I picture some sort of 80s video with some sort of synchronized dancing kind of stuff going on.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that going.
Apart from that, now I listened to your other work, and you've got quite a mix there from, chiptunes, and I've heard some ambient stuff with orchestral sounds and some dubstep.
Yeah.
Why did you choose this particular sound for Calico Braun?
Well, basically, it all started with chiptune. That was the big thing about, it must have been 5-6 years ago now. My friend showed me what chiptune was all about, and making music with old video games consoles and pulse waves and all of these sort of things. That was my calling for a while. I started making trance and stuff. But then I ended up going to a load of dubstep gigs basically down where I was at university. And that sort of took over in a big way for me. It was just before it sort of hit in a big way in the UK. So it was all sort of really dark raves and stuff. But it was way before Skrillex and all the jump up sort of thing. So I saw TC, and I saw a live dubstep group, which was pretty cool. That went on for a while, and I started producing that and, sort of bass-orientated music. And it got to a point where I did some remixes for people and played out a lot, played with quite a lot of people who I really admired. And then, I don't know, it sort of hit saturation point in terms of production, and I was like, I'm not really enjoying this anymore, because everything has to be so polished. And has to be, the whole loudness war, and your music has to be brick walled this loud, and all of that sort of stuff here. And basically I thought, well, I'd started to put in bits of 80s bits. I've always loved hardware kit. I've been collecting all sorts of old keyboards and rack bits for a while. And kids' keyboards. I used to do lots of circuit bending with anything I could find at a car boot sale. So it was just me and a soldering iron for a while making disgusting noises. Yeah. But, yeah, so after that, the 80s thing, I put some bits in some tracks, I don't know, just with old synths, and then it just sort of became a calling. I don't know, I've always loved Bladerunner and Vangelis, and is it Vangelis or Vangelis?
You know what?
I think it's Vangelis.
I've never heard, I say Vangelis, but I think it's Vangelis, and I've never heard...
I think it might be Vangelis.
I've heard no one say it out loud.
No, it doesn't come up in conversation that often, really, I guess. But
yeah, because the other one, when I first discovered this stuff was going on, it was because I was listening to a video game soundtrack for a game called Hotline Miami, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And the one song that sort of stuck out in that one was... And I don't know how to say his name. Is it Perturbator or Perturbator? I don't know that word.
Yeah, we were having a debate about this the other week. I think it's some sort of chat window.
Right.
That was, I think it's, I don't even want to say it now because I get it wrong. But
yeah. I'll be the guy to take the fall for all of those stupid things. I'll say, I don't know. It's one of those two. I know it's a word, but it's a word I've never used in my life. Maybe it's one of those words that has a different European pronunciation than North American.
Maybe. But so it sort of just progressed into 80s synth stuff. And I did an album. It was originally a sort of a period music portfolio piece after I'd OD'd on Bladerunner basically last summer. Mm-hmm. I was writing a dissertation and I don't know, needed some break from it, so I just started producing this 80s sort of soundtrack, and that sort of spiraled into 18 tracks, and it was pretty well received. Bizarrely, because it's pretty esoteric, really. I've made some sort of weird concept album to do with, 80s sci-fi film soundtracks and sort of post-war architecture, which I think, that was the other thing with that one, is where I live, it's a weird mix of weird brutalist concrete structures with really old nice buildings. So
right.
That definitely played a part in it. But Calico Braun was basically OD again, but it was on Miami Vice. I watched Miami Vice a bit before, but winter here was pretty bleak. So I don't know. I needed some sun in my life. Yeah. So I watched all 5 series back to back. I was like, man, Jan Hammer is pretty damn awesome. I invested in a load of digital 80s rack mount gear, which is going real cheap at the moment because everyone wants the versions with the keyboards. So that was basically it, and just tried to channel a bit of him into it, I guess. But there's always bits of modern bits that sort of slip in, even when trying to do sort of 80s bits. I don't know.
When you are making, say you sit down to say make an album or whatever, do you create, like, as far as the sound goes, like whatever you're feeling in the moment, or do you sit down and say I'm going to do a specific, like say you're going to do a chiptune thing? Would that be a conscious, like, I'm going to do a chiptune album, or do you do it because at that moment you're just into those sounds?
I think it really, really depends. Like, because a lot of the music I write for a living at the moment, like I'm a composer for bits of visual media or whatever. Obviously, then you're working to a brief. Say someone will say like, "Oh, I don't know. Yeah, for example, I need a chiptune track. I need something, reminiscent of old school video games," and you go, "Okay, yeah, I can do that." But like, if I'm just writing for my own pleasure and my own stuff, then it just tends to be I'll sit down and just jam basically on a keyboard until something comes together, and I'll just keep doing that over and over. If I get stuck, I start a new track, and it rolls over. So I end up working on about sort of 10 tracks at a time,
right,
on the side. Some ideas get axed, they'll never see the light of day. But it's I think with albums and stuff, it's more sort of like pulling together bits that work well together. And that sounds pretty stupid, but and obvious. But yeah, and then sort of finding a common theme or flow between them. And I don't know, sometimes the palette of sounds will be very similar. But, there's always a few curveball-y bits that, I don't know, I try and put on stuff. But
before I just, you mentioned circuit bending. What is circuit bending?
Oh, basically, yeah, you get an old keyboard or something that doesn't really matter about, or something that doesn't cost very much. So I used to go around, car boot sales and charity shops and stuff. And it'd always be, really odd or old, electronic instruments that aren't very precious. Like, I don't know, I've got a ton of old Yamaha and really bad Casio keyboards, but not the sort of nice ones. And you'd open it up and you'd need a jeweler's screwdriver and a crocodile clip, and you'll turn it on and you'll place this around the circuit board until it starts distorting the sound or making really cool sort of aleatoric noises that you wouldn't get otherwise. And then you'll solder in that bridge between those 2 points on the circuit board and maybe put a switch on or whatever. And you can get pretty into it. But yeah, I used to make all of my, well, not all of them, but most of my dubsteppy bass noises or whatever by doing that. So
I didn't know that was a thing.
There's a whole culture built around circuit bending.
Did you did you say you were doing a dissertation on Bladerunner? Did I hear that?
Oh no, dissertation was on Transformers. Oh. It got pretty far out, but it's a good excuse to sit down and watch God knows how many 100 episodes of them.
Well, it's funny because once the whole resurgence happened with all the old shows coming out on DVD,
yeah,
and I finally got to rewatch Transformers and they had the box set, and I love that show, but I forgot how poor the animation is.
Yeah, I did a whole thing about how many frames just keep getting reused, and all the sound design is stolen from Star Wars and all sorts.
I seem to notice when I was listening to it, I heard a couple sound effects that I think were from Doctor Who.
Yeah, definitely.
I know that that cartoon must be running at 4 frames a second, and I believe in every episode the wrong voice comes out of one of the Transformers.
Yeah,
I think that happens in every one.
it's pretty bad. There's so many animation sort of bloops.
So what exactly was the dissertation about?
That was about ecology and the environment in Transformers. It was pretty out there, I was basically arguing the Decepticons are misunderstood eco-terrorists. And the Autobots are champions of industry and industrialization and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
So then,
the road less traveled of academia, I think.
I still to this day love the season 3 version of the theme song.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
That's my favorite one.
And I like the movie. The movie soundtrack's awesome as well. I mean, that's actually coming back to 80s synth stuff. Vince DiCola, his music's pretty awesome. And he did Rocky 4 as well.
Yeah.
So.
Rocky 4 has got some. The sequence where the robot comes out to wish Polly a happy birthday.
I'd forgotten about that.
And the music's great. I mean, the music, the score stuff in Transformers, the movie, is good. I was never fond of the soundtrack.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's Weird Al Yankovic's on it.
Yeah, there's
an odd choice.
Dare to Be Stupid dance number that... I don't know. That's one of those things that sort of frustrates me a bit, because when people remember Transformers, they always sort of point to the theme song from the film and all the stuff that happens in the movie. But I just remember always really thinking like the season 3 song was cooler. Like it just had such a cool sound to it.
I like it all. It's all pretty weird. The sound design though, like the actual transforming noise, that's like pretty heavy duty. Like I've seen so many people try to reproduce it, but no one really knows how it was done. It's quite interesting. It's just one of those weird, it's a bit like a Wilhelm scream. No one really knows where it came from or whatever.
See, that's another one of those things, because I don't know much like technical things about sound, but I do I video edit and I've done some sound mixing and stuff, and sound design is something that I'm very aware of, even if I don't fully understand technically what's happening.
Yeah.
And the Wilhelm scream is one of those things that needs to stop, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cliche.
It was fun. It was fun pointing it out when I was a kid and finding the movies where it was, but now it seems to be in anytime there's any sort of blockbuster of any kind, there's a Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
And I just find it distracting, especially in like the Lord of the Rings movies and the extended editions. There's actually like 2 Wilhelm screams per film.
You've got to wonder whether it's just the sound guy going, man, how many of these can I slip in without anybody noticing before it actually premieres or something?
Yeah, at this point, I'm getting the impression that it's like a rite of passage, like of a sound editor who, is, because I'm very sensitive to sound effects that get reused. So in movies, whenever there's a cat, whenever a pot breaks, it's always the same sound.
Yeah.
Like there's a CD you can buy with like 8 cat meows, and those are like the 8 cat meows that they've been using since like the 60s.
Yeah, people need to go out and do some field recording on something today.
So you mentioned on your bio, and we were just talking about this, that you are classically trained.
Oh, yeah, ish. Yeah, I try to stay... I don't know, it helps in terms of writing music and knowing what works. I think it means you work a lot faster. Well, maybe, I don't know. I think a lot of classical musicians who I've met and know, a lot of them don't write their own music. They can play things perfectly by rote or whatever, but if you actually ask them to have a jam or something, they won't. Or maybe they could if they actually tried or whatever. But maybe I just know a very limited sphere of people who are into classical music, but no, it's been pretty helpful. I mean, knowing how to orchestrate and stuff, that's really useful. I don't regret it. I didn't enjoy any of it at the time. I absolutely hated piano lessons. Mm-hmm. Really hated singing beyond all measure. But yeah, looking back now, I'm kind of glad. Really.
Does that sort of, do you think that it's a trend that gives you that appreciation for like the technical? Like I read your the liner notes that come with Calico Braun.
Oh yeah.
There's some stuff there that's, it's over my head technically. I can tell by the way you write that it sounds like you enjoy writing.
I don't know. I don't write very often now. I guess with the English degrees, probably, maybe. I don't know. I was doing some roundups on my blog, just good free plugins and stuff for people to check out. And I did a few tutorials. So it's been a really hectic fortnight. The past 2 weeks have been pretty mental.
Right.
So it's sort of tapered off, but I want to try and start it up again. But yeah, I do quite like writing about music-y bits, I guess. I think the technical thing is weird. There's a difference between sort of technical proficiency of an instrument or whatever, and then sort of the whole production side is just like another thing altogether, really. Like the two cross over, because if you could instrument a piece well, then it means mixing down is a sort of a lot easier, because like everything's already sitting in its right space in terms of frequencies and stuff. So yeah, production was something I got into quite late, really, I guess. I didn't really know anyone when I was growing up who had like a computer which could run music software or whatever.
Right.
So, and even then, even when I started the chiptune stuff, that was just all hardware gear. Like, actually, I got I was in a load of bands and stuff, so I bought this called Retrowave, which is like a blue box which you can write synth on and drums. And it was basically just a keyboardist, because I played guitar in all these bands or whatever. we used it for backing bits for the band, and then that sort of fell apart. And I was like, man, I've got this blue box I don't really know what to do with. And then I started using that to sequence electronic music. And that was probably the way into it. And then, so that was all sort of hardware bits. Always been hardware orientated. It took me ages to actually switch over to just writing music on a laptop. And even then, I'm like, I'd rather play it in or actually make a sound on a hardware synth as opposed to clicking with a mouse until you got the right noise.
Right. How would the process be? I know anything that I've ever made, I use like really cheap software. I use like Fruity Loops and stuff to make things, but it's all completely digital, you know, with like a MIDI keyboard. When you're saying like with the stuff that you make that you still do it with analog keyboards and stuff, or have you switched to using plugins and stuff?
It's probably about 50-50 now. I mean, for the 80s stuff, it's generally, I mean, obviously it's all still MIDI because I've got a rack sat here on my desk, which is just like some like digital 80s synths. And I think I said before that they're pretty unpopular at the moment, so now's the time to buy digital 80s rack mount synths if people are into it. And you get some really good sounds out of them. They can get pretty complicated because you're programming in on like a 2x16 LCD screen or whatever, so it can get pretty tedious. Or you could sync it up by MIDI and sort of get the MIDI to program it and use the computer, but I don't know, sort of takes the fun out of pushing buttons. So yeah, it's about 50-50 though. So I'll write the MIDI in on the computer, or I'll play it in with a MIDI keyboard, and then either source that MIDI out to the synth and feed the audio back in. So I've got like some audio to play around with, or the other half is sort of there's a couple of plugins I always keep going back to, which make sort of 80s vibes, I guess. They're pretty nicely lended to it, but they're all quite simple. I think as far as like, you're saying like Fruity Loops and stuff, it doesn't matter what you use, you'll get the same result pretty much with, any DAW.
Do you compose stuff first, or do you just play?
Kind of depends. I think drums I tend to sort of sit down and write, but they either come first or they come last, depending on anything else. But yeah, it's usually just jamming on a keyboard until something comes together. And then there's a nice sort of interplay between actually playing and then tweaking a synth or whatever to get, a sound, and then that will influence how you're playing a riff or chord sequence or something. And then it sort of all comes together. It's kind of an organic way of writing music, I guess, because with all the dubstep stuff I used to write, and that was all sort of just, it's all pretty much one note through the song, just played by different synths going at different rates and stuff. So that's just like clicking with a mouse, and the drum patterns are always the same. And it's kind of nice to write stuff that isn't just 4 to the floor or half-time rhythms or whatever. So, yeah.
When you try and capture that sort of 80s sort of sound, do you find it's easier to start with the beat or start with the chords or whatever?
It sort of depends. I'll tend to... It goes one of two ways. Either I sort of start with the drums and I'll just write down a beat and I'll choose a palette of sounds either from like some drum machines or you can synthesize your own basically with white noise or a sine wave or whatever and build it from there. And then I used to layer up the drums a lot so you could make more distinctive sounds, but I've sort of gone back a step and sort of stripped it back to keep it simple really. Or, use samples from other projects, like older versions or whatever, and tweak them a bit. But yeah, build like a palette of drum sounds and find, just jam along, find some complementary synths. Or it goes the other way, exact opposite, where I'll start with a synth or a bass line or something, some sort of hook, and then sort of build it up from there. But yeah, drums are pretty important now, I reckon. Obviously, it's sort of the backbone, along with the bass line, and the interplay between them needs to be pretty tight.
Right.
Usually, I mean, there are no steadfast rules or whatever, but yeah.
This might be a cliche question, but who or what would you say are your biggest musical influences?
Oh man, that's a heavy hitting question.
This one was written for me by a robot.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Growing up, it was all sort of virtuoso guitarists. Stuff, so like Steve Vai was one of them. So I think that influenced the music in a lot of ways. Even now, like I always think of things modally instead of just sort of playing a straight scale or whatever. Like there's that whole aspect to it. With the 80s, I guess Steve Vai is kind of 80s really. He was in Dave Lee Roth's group. But in terms of 80s stuff, I know John Carpenter, he's pretty pretty awesome. And Vangelis, or Vangelis, as we've already said. He's got to be up there.
I'll beep out the one that's wrong.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's not something I really think about very often. I just sort of hear music and go, I really like it, or sort of leave it. I think it's probably easy to say sort of, rather than name specific names, sort of just, I'm really into things with groove, like in a big way. Lots of syncopated rhythms and stuff. I got really into glitch hop about 2 years ago. I think that's starting to seep in now. I've been writing some stuff recently that's sort of like, I don't even know if it's very 80s anymore because I don't know if I'll release it, but it's been fun to do. It's sort of really sort of glitchy bits, but with 80s synths or weird syncopated bits. But
I've used a plugin before that was like a glitch plugin.
Yeah.
Where it all sort of like randomizes the thing and there's, you know, like flanging and all sorts of weirdness cutting in.
Yeah, this is sort of like real syncopated. Things don't fall bang on the beat and they shuffle and there's a real sort of groove. I don't know, a couple of guys like Cohen Sound, they're pretty glitch hoppy. They're sort of like bass music again. There's a guy called, I think, Upio or Opio. I don't know how to pronounce it again. But I think he's from, I can't remember now. I want to say Australia, but I don't want to offend I don't want to offend him. Not that he'll probably listen, because he's pretty famous. But, you know, but yeah, their stuff's pretty tight. I just think I've got a little bit tired. I mean, I really like droney synths and stuff and like bam, 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 bass lines and stuff where it's really ostinato. But I want to do something that's a bit more groovy right now. Maybe it's just the mood I'm in at the moment. Like, I'll change. It's kind of warm at the moment and a little bit sunny, so give it a couple of weeks when it starts raining again in England. I'll be back on the dystopian synth vibe, I imagine. But
I'm new to the whole kind of Bandcamp SoundCloud thing. Like, I've just sort of discovered, I know I'm late to a party that started a while ago, but when I started searching for it, now I see that, you know, like you and other artists I've listened to have their work on both sites. And I'm wondering what the advantage is of either one, because when I look at Bandcamp, I see an interface that just makes more sense. Like, it just seems like, but I don't know what's the point of SoundCloud versus Bandcamp?
I mean, SoundCloud used to be really, really good, like about 4 or 5 years ago. But they've recently redone it all. I just think it looks cluttered. I really like the minimalism thing they had before, where it was just like you can stream the music. It worked. People could comment or favorite or whatever, and it was just a really good platform. And then they basically got influxed with spam, and then third-party bits got involved, and it got really complicated. Bandcamp is basically, I think it's a way forward in terms of music and stuff, because obviously it's direct to fan, you know, stuff in terms of sales, and you actually support the artist, which is pretty cool compared to stuff like iTunes or whatever, where you get, I don't know, a real sliver after distribution costs and everything else.
Right.
Plus you can stream it all for free, and people can offer things for free download if they want. And yeah, I like Bandcamp. I think it's really cool. Just really nice layout. I like graphically pleasing websites, I always think.
Yeah, because I know when I started, like, when people were posting links to SoundCloud, and I would go to that site, and it just looks like nonsense to me. It's all waveforms and little squares on the waveform where people are commenting, and it just seems just like a mess.
Yeah, it used to be a lot clearer. It just used to be, you know, straight up, like, you still had the waveform thing, but because the whole page wasn't cluttered with, you know, other things, it looked really nice. It was really minimalist, and it sort of worked. It did. And a lot of sound recordists and, like, you know, people who do field recordings and stuff would use it and just sort of share their sounds, which was really nice. I think the person I don't know if she was some sort of high position person in SoundCloud rather, and she said, like, you know, you look at a picture from a holiday or something, you know, you could sort of see the picture, but if you take a recording of your holiday at that moment and play it back with a picture, then it will conjure more memories. So a lot of people used to use it for that, and then it sort of got inundated with all sorts of stuff, and it just got cluttered, and then the actual design of the site got cluttered, and I don't really use it anymore, unless someone sort of personally recommends a link, or I see something I think I might like, I guess. But I used to sit and browse SoundCloud for hours and find all sorts of cool people, but it's still a bit of a MySpace, really, I think.
I wanted to talk a bit about your album 194, so I thought I would just play a little quick sample from it, and then we'll talk about it after. And that was just a bit of the song 2019 off the album 194. So yeah, tell me a bit about this album.
Yeah, that was a real sort of soundtracky attempt to sort of it was very Bladerunner-y, if that's a term. Yeah, John Carpenter, bits of synth and stuff. It was really unfortunate because just as I'd sort of finished producing it, I discovered an album called Drock by Jeff Barrow and Ben Salisbury. So Jeff Barrow from Portishead, but they'd done something very similar. Like,
did you mention that on a blog post? I feel like I followed a link to that and I listened to it. It was minimal, right?
Yeah, Drock's really cool. It's like all inspired by 2000 AD and Judge Dredd and stuff. I think they were originally going to it was originally part of a soundtrack to the Dredd 3D film. But yeah, that was real John Carpenter as well. But yeah, real minimal sort of just one Oberheim synth going and then white noise and stuff. It was pretty cool. I think it was one of those things that people either really liked or really didn't like or something. I don't know.
I love that with 194 you were selling red cassette tapes.
Tapes. I dubbed each one by hand.
So how did you get, where did those come from?
There's a couple of dealers of tapes in the UK and I think they've just bought up as much tape as they possibly can. So coloured cassettes are a bit of a rarity as far as I'm aware. I was going to do some for Calico Braun, but I couldn't find the right shade of orange or blue. Yeah. So the tape sales are actually up by quite a lot at the moment, along with vinyl obviously, but tape seems to have gone through some sort of weird cassette revival. But I mean, I still listen to tapes. I bought quite a few synth-wavy people's cassettes. Not many people do it really still, but Bandcamp does have a cassette chart, so it's kind of worth checking out. And they're pretty cheap to buy and cheap for the artist to make, because unless you ask for a very specific sort of length of tape to be loaded in the shells, or you want a specific color, it's not actually that expensive to release onto tape. Apart from the only thing it takes, the longest thing is dubbing them yourself if you're going to go that route. Because with 194, it was I can't remember how long the album is now. It's 44 minutes.
There's a lot of short. I noticed that when I looked at it, because it was you have a lot of tracks on that album, but they're not. I mean, I don't think there might be one that's over 3 minutes.
Yeah, they're all quite sort of short vignettes. The whole one of the concepts behind it was sort of film soundtracks. So each one maybe just a cue or a scene.
Right.
Stuff I was imagining as I wrote it, and then hopefully that would translate to people as they were, listening and imagining similar things maybe. But yeah, so there's a couple of thematic developments in it that sort of evolve across the album and then crop up in different songs. So I think there's about 3-4 main themes now, thinking back, but it seemed to work.
Well, I mean, it sounds great. It's a really cool album. I found that, I listened to the Drock album, but I found your arrangements a bit more complex.
Yeah, Drock was pretty minimal, I guess. I'd put stuff orchestral, bits and bobs, and I don't know, I put some, beats, I guess, because Drock, I think it's pretty much, you get sort of the John Carpenter Assault on Precinct 13, the white noisy bits. I copied some of that sort of stuff. Yeah, Drock was real little, but I really like it. I think it's a real brutalist album. So I don't know, I this is again go back to where I'm living at the moment. It's just sort of weird concrete high rises and I don't know, you can sort of see post-war architecture or whatever, and how it was originally designed to be sort of all municipal and utilitarian or whatever, and it gets corrupted, and all of the 80s sci-fi movies seem to have some sort of crazy brutalist building. Undoubtedly I think it sort of influenced what I was doing. Especially, stark sort of minimalist stuff. That's the sort of thing I imagine with Drock as well. And especially with the Drock thing, Judge Dredd and 2000 AD, it's all sort of high rises and mega blocks and mega towers and mega cities and all of that sort of stuff. So. And
I know you've done some soundtracks for games. Tell me a bit about Actual Sunlight.
Yeah, Actual Sunlight was really cool. So I got in touch with Will, who's the developer of the game. Basically said, would you like some music? And he said, yep. He liked 194 a lot, but he really wanted some sort of Torontonian hip hop vibes, so that's what we went with in the end. But it was good fun to work on. It was it's 2 weeks turnaround for the job. But it was really cool. It was a really cool game. It's pretty dark. It's all about depression. And
has that been released?
Yeah. The game's out. I haven't released the soundtrack. I don't know if I will. I don't know if there's a demand for it really. But the game is amazing. I just don't know if the soundtrack would work without the game, if that makes sense. It was a real sort of complementary thing. The whole idea was I didn't want the music to overpower the game, and had to sit just right. But I wanted them to work really tightly together, because other stuff, I've got a few projects I'm working on at the moment. Well, I'm waiting for post-production to roll around on a few, hence why I'm writing 80s music stuff at the moment. But so yeah, August is going to be a busy month.
That's good though.
It's good. Yeah, it is good. I can talk about one of them because I think I've been announced as composer for it. That's called Passed Away, which is like, it's going to be an interactive narrative / story / comic. You know, do you remember Choose Your Own Adventure games or Choose Your Own Adventure books? Where,
yeah.
You know, turn to page 61 and then you find out you're dead or whatever. Yeah. It's going to be like one of those. For
that's how every choice ends.
near enough. Yeah. I had a Transformers one actually. I remember when I was little. But yeah, it's for iPad, and yeah, it looks awesome. But I'm waiting for them to build the audio engine at the moment so I can get writing. But they want specifically sort of Vangelis style audio bits really for it to match the aesthetics. It's kind of it looks a little bit like Bladerunner. I'm not entirely sure what the plot is just yet. I haven't played it, but the visuals look phenomenal. It's all illustrated and animated. So
when you go into scoring for a game or sort of an interactive thing, are you with the people you've worked with anyways allowed to play the thing to get ideas, or are you involved early on in the production process where your music is also helping shape what they do?
Everything I've worked on so far, I've come on board like either just before post-production starts or as post-production started. So I haven't had like a creative input whatsoever in the game, but it's just been sort of complementing what the actual gameplay is or whatever thing, what sort of sounds they're after and what they're looking for, because I'm pretty happy to write anything at this point, like anything from bebop to massive overblown orchestral bits or whatever. But yeah, the 80s stuff is just totally like that's a real passion, but it is sort of like for downtime and whatever. It's also like really personal, I guess, because it's what I enjoy. So I mean, not that I don't enjoy the other stuff either. Like, it's a dream at the moment,
And the EP you made, the a la carte one.
Oh yeah.
It's actually really awesome. That first track, I forget what it's called, like the first one.
I've forgotten as well, so don't worry.
But that song is awesome. Like it's got such a cool tune. I'll just play a quick clip of it so people know what we're talking about. It's just cool, because it has chiptune sound, but you've thrown in like orchestral things and you've thrown in these sort of big beats. And the melody of that one is really cool. Like, it's a catchy little song.
It was a weird one, that like EP. Basically, there's a guy called Jimmy who runs a bar / cafe. It's a gaming bar thing. So the idea is you go in and you buy a drink, or you buy gaming themed cocktails, I think is the other thing. And then you can sit and play games. But he was doing a crowdfunding thing to open up in London, because he was based down in Cornwall, which is literally the bottom left-hand side of the UK, like as far away from anything as you possibly get. So, but he asked me to do an EP, and I was like, yeah. I said, what do you want? He was like, something sort of chiptune-y, but also video game soundtracky. So I was like, well, I'll just do a blend of the two and see what happens. But yeah, I don't know if, I think it's been emailed out to people who backed the campaign now, but yeah, I put it up as well. But yeah, no, it was really good fun to write. It's quite a quick turnaround. It took about a week, I think. And he was really happy with it, which is kind of what matters. So.
Well, it's always fun to have those sounds. There's people who do chiptunes music who stick very strictly to the format, which is still fun.
Yeah.
But also it's always nice to sort of break away where you have those chiptune sounds, and it sounds like the way you start the tracks off, like they are a simple chiptunes thing, and then it sort of breaks away and becomes something like a lot more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I know quite a lot of chiptuning people from, I was going to say back in the day, but it really wasn't that long ago. Like, I think chiptune's still going strong in a big way. It's all over the place. In fact, it's probably more popular now than it has been. I don't know. It went through a little recession, I think, in terms of popularity the past year, but like it's back up now.
I love the idea of the recession of chiptunes music.
Yeah.
The Great Recession.
But yeah, there was a real problem when I first started making it with like, there were real purists. And like anything that was not made on a Game Boy or, a C64 or an Atari, but that was fake bit. So, lots of kids and stuff would use YMVST and Magical 8-bit and all of these plugins for, DAWs or whatever, and just make it in Fruity Loops. Or like people would give them so much stick, and it's like, it's not really an issue, it's still music.
There's always just something great about what people will be purists about.
Yeah.
It's funny to me. Like, I get it. Like, in a way, I understand both sides. But for me, it's always been about, and the reason why I like chiptunes music is because music to me is always about melody.
Yeah.
So when I try to explain people who don't understand why I would listen to video game music. I mean, obviously now it's a bit different because the production values are a lot more sort of lavish. But, growing up with chiptunes, like in the video games, it was always about the fact that they only had these beeps and boops, so they had to make really cool tunes.
Yeah, exactly.
And to this day, those melodies are, they're all in our brains, and they're almost stronger in a way than, because a lot of modern video game music is more about atmosphere.
Yeah,
and I don't
and you can get away with sound design. But the line between sound design and composition gets so blurred. Whereas people writing in like the 80s for like they had 4 channels, 2 pulse sort of channels, a tri channel, and then like a noise channel, and that was it. And you'd have to make a complete soundtrack for a whole game out of those 4 things. You can only have 4 things going on at once. So I just think it's super cliche, but the stuff like the Mario theme tune, the amount of mileage he got out of those 4 channels is insane.
Definitely, like with those old games, like I've got strong attachments to some of those melodies, even for games I played for like 2 seconds, or there's just something about that sound and that time that was all. I feel the same way with movie scores now as well. Is like I like to, not that it's always appropriate, but I always like a good tune. You know what I mean? When you come when you come out of a movie and you have like the original Batman theme or the Superman or Star whatever, when you come out and you can say there was a song. And now that seems to not be the case anymore. There are still really cool scores.
Yeah.
But it's definitely sort of a different thing. And that's why I always gravitated towards that stuff as a kid, and I always found that it was the synth scores that had more of sort of like a melody to me, like something I could hum, Yeah,
I do think actually at the moment, film scoring is really interesting because there seems to be, it sort of went super overblown, bombastic orchestral stuff for the past decade. And then now it's sort of coming, like, I think of films like Tron. And,
Tron was awesome. Like, that was a cool score.
And then the last Batman film, in terms of so much of it is actually synth. It may sound like orchestra, but like a lot of it, like, I'm not even talking sort of like, romplers and like orchestral libraries and samplers and stuff.
Right.
So much of it is actual synth bits. It's really cool.
The Batman score was good. It was probably like the better thing of that film, but the score he did before for Inception, that movie's got some cool music. Yeah,
it really does. I do like Hans Zimmer a lot. I think he's pretty awesome. Both Inception and the last Batman movie, like, it was all a plugin called Zebra 2 by UHE. and I use some of their stuff for, like, because it's all sort of geared towards analog emulations and stuff. You know, if you don't have an analog synth to hand, which, you know, not all of us do. And they're pretty reasonably priced, and like the freebies they have on their website are insanely good. Like, it's just top-notch stuff, and it all sounds pretty genuine in terms of sort of, you know, sound quality is awesome. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time for films. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in the next few years, really.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a trend that will stick. I've noticed video games are sort of slowly catching up, because a lot of the AAA games recently have just been emulating what the film industry's doing. And
there's a couple I've heard that are very good. For the most part, I found that it's the same, like I was saying before, where I'm not finding a melody or like a through line that I can sort of connect to. Like, the music's good. You know what I mean? Like, it all sounds very nice. But there's one guy, he did a score for this game called Deus Ex. Michael McCann, I think his name is.
Yeah.
And there's some really, really neat tracks on that soundtrack specifically. And there's also some other good ones. The ones for Skyrim and Elder Scrolls have some good melodies as well.
I haven't actually played, like, I don't have an Xbox, it'd be too much of a distraction. But every time my brother's got an Xbox, so when I periodically see him, you know, every 6 months, maybe every year, like, we catch up mainly by playing Xbox. So it's good always to see. I sort of get a yearly roundup of what's going on in the video game industry.
Yeah.
But indie games are very into the 80s stuff at the moment.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like,
for sure.
As you said, like Hotline Miami, that was pretty massive, really. And the whole soundtrack, that's a pretty killer soundtrack. I think I'm right in saying, was it Surgeon Simulator? I think that had a 80s-ish soundtrack. But yeah, it's really interesting. I do think with things like, as we've said, like Tron and
it was special too. I think there are certain things that I think a lot of people do like, but they don't ever say it. And I think that there's that sort of synth, and I think synth-wave is part of that too, like this sort of music, and 80s sort of music in general. It's like, people never really talk about it too much.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I've not met a person, despite what kind of music they like or whatever, that doesn't have fun when, like, Take On Me by a-ha is playing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's just sort of some sort of ingrained feel-good,
exactly,
you know, factor. It's not even just a pure nostalgic thing, I don't think. I just think it's genuinely good music, and a lot of 80s pop stuff is like just great songs, you know?
Yeah. You mentioned this on your site, or actually it was on the PDF with Calico Braun, that you mastered the stuff to VHS?
Yeah.
What does that do?
Basically, I found, like, I did a similar thing with 194. I recorded all of 194 to reel, like, to tape. Again, it's one of these things that really got me into the whole 80s thing. Is it doesn't have to be pristine audio quality. I mean, it can be, but I kind of prefer if I get some warmth from tape, or with VHS is a similar thing. Like, I found the worst sounding VHS I've probably heard that sort of, you know, they start to wobble over time. The tape gets a bit worn out. It starts to overbias if you record a little bit too hot to it. So yeah, it was just an aesthetic thing. Like, I don't know how many people are doing it in the immediate sort of synthwave thing that I know, who are like recording to tape or VHS or whatever.
And I imagine there must be some plugins that can sort of replicate those effects.
What's it called? Isotope made one. I think it's called Vinyl, and it will put like a vinyl crackle on, and you can age the sound of a track back by decade. That basically just rolls off the treble and the bass a little bit.
Right.
It sounds pretty good, but yeah, I don't know. I'd rather record the real thing if I've got the time.
Did you ever see, there was a show in England, it was called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place?
Yes, I love Dark Place.
Okay, because that's probably one of my favorite things I've ever seen in my life. I'm wondering, because when I saw that VHS thing, I'm wondering if they did a similar thing, because it really sounded to me like the incidental music in that show.
Yeah.
That they
it's unfortunate they never released the soundtrack.
Because the soundtrack is awesome, and also there was a lot of moments where they mimicked the cheap editing, and you would hear the sound kind of wobble, and the music would like wobble under an edit and stuff like that. And
that's the sort of thing I'm going for, just because Andrew Hewitt's the guy who composed News for Dark Place. I think he got a BAFTA nomination as Best New Composer, because was such good period music, such good 80s sort of music.
After reading your bio, and you mentioned it briefly, but that you also do stuff as Monster.
Yeah, I used to, I guess.
Why the distinction, or was that you just changed it up?
Well, originally, Monster was like, we started doing chiptune. It was me and another guy were making this chiptune stuff over the internet, basically, and then he dropped out, and we'd been doing sort of, it's called chipstep, I guess, because it's sort of dubstep chiptune. I really don't like the name, but that was super good, and I was like, well, I'm doing all this circuit bending stuff and getting some pretty hench bass noises, so I don't know. It sort of just transitioned to dubstep with like 8-bit things stuck in, and that went on for a good 3 years or whatever. And it was all right. It helped me out in terms of living at uni and whatever, and I got to play a lot of gigs, and I toured the country a couple of times. And it was really good fun. Did a lot of remixes, but it just got to saturation for it, I think. And I was like, I'm really tired of having to over polish mixes and master really, really loud and all this sort of stuff.
What exactly do you do when you play live or you tour around? Like, when I picture people like making electronic music, I just picture a dude at a computer.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, I did proper live sets with the sequencer and like all sorts of bits going, basically all synced up. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just pressing play on a laptop. So it was fun. I did stuff live. I mean, admittedly, later on, I did just sort of start DJing as I sort of got more into the dubstep crowd because people wanted to hear other people's tracks.
Right.
At a night. I wasn't a big enough name to just play a set of my own music at like club nights or whatever. So it was two sort of gigs basically ended up being. You had like a live set where people came not necessarily explicitly to see you, but you or other people on the bill, or maybe you're supporting someone more famous.
Right.
Or if it was just sort of, you got booked to play in a club, then that was basically DJing off a laptop. It was also fun, but so much less demanding, and also you don't have to cart all your kit. You just take one laptop, and then jobs are good and bad.
What would you say? I know this is a terrible question, but with what are some of your sort of favorite tracks of yours that you've made?
I don't know. I guess 194, I think, is probably the album I'm most happiest with ever. Like, full stop. I wouldn't change a thing about it. It sounded just how I wanted it to sound, which is pretty rare. But off Calico Broad, again, I wouldn't release it if I wasn't really happy with it. But I guess my favourite track off that, I'm trying to think of ones which are the most fun to write. Because I think with me, it's often more about the sort of process of writing a track that I remember more fondly than the finished product, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really like the second track, the Calico Dawn one. That was really fun.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, like, that whole album is great. What I love, I mean, I've been listening to a lot of stuff, and there's been a lot of stuff that's been very good, but I find, and I don't know if it's because of your training or because of just, how long you've been at it, but your albums really have, like, that full... They just sound full. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like
kind.
every part of the speaker is shooting music at me, and it's awesome.
I do think one of the things people aren't doing is it's one of those things I've not got of a habit from producing all this bass music for so many years. Is I always layer a sub bass underneath underneath my bass line, just an octave down, which I do think makes a difference because you get more control over the low end of the music, and it also does mean like. It will rattle speakers if people crank it up or whatever. But I don't know if it makes it more dancey or something, but I do think it's just one of those things, really.
Yeah. I don't mean to, I know I specifically keep talking about Calico Braun. I know, like, I make things, and I know that feeling of when you are artistically, you make something, but someone always wants to talk about one specific thing. And
no, it's totally cool, don't worry.
Because I know that feeling, but I just, like, the album is so cool, and I really like that moment. I think it's in the track Braun, when it hits like the 1 minute mark.
And it goes all sort of like groovy.
Yeah, I love that.
A lot more chilled out, yeah.
And definitely like, but the whole thing has such just a good sound and like a consistent sound throughout the whole thing. I think that's what I've really liked about a lot of the stuff, your stuff and other stuff I've found too, is that there seems to be more of a consistency in people's albums that they release. In this genre, like, I'm so used to when I was looking for electronic music, before I found this whole scene, And there was always these albums where there was, like the one good song.
Yeah.
And I'm not finding that to be the case with this stuff. Like, I'm really finding that these are like whole albums that I want to listen to.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. It's like people, they're trying to make a cohesive sort of finished album, I guess, because, I don't know, on a lot of albums, in general, there's usually a couple of filler tracks. There's very few albums that you can listen to from start to finish, but as you say, I think a lot of people in the synthwave whole sort of thing, they must spend a lot of time curating the right tracks, finding out, the track order that works best, and they all complement each other. And it does just sound like, it's a bit like a good mix, as in like DJ mix. It will take you on a journey or something like that. I think it's all about cohesion.
Are there any, do you listen to other artists that are doing this stuff?
Not when I'm writing music.
Right.
Because I tend to listen to like completely different stuff when I'm actually sort of trying to write something A to Z. But if I'm doing sort of composition work, then I'll listen to whoever really. But I guess Comtrue's, he's pretty awesome. I really like his stuff. It's pretty chill. It's really sort of, you've got that nice tapey hiss or whatever. I'm all about groove at the moment. I don't know what's happened to me. But, yeah, I've listened to him a bit recently. He seems like a really cool guy as well. Like, bizarrely, he really liked 194, which was sort of one of those moments that it was I sort of had to go for about 4 cigarettes and then sort of peel myself off the ceiling before it really sunk in. But yeah, it's really weird when that sort of, I know, surreal, I think is the word, when those sort of things happen. But,
right.
Yep, I've got a screen cap of that tweet, so for posterity. So, yeah.
No, that's cool. Well, I think we're good.
Yeah.
We're good. You happy about it?
Yeah, thanks a mil. Really, really appreciate it.
Do you have anything coming up you want to talk about, or website people should go to, or any of that stuff?
I can't really announce anything I've got coming up because of various embargoes or whatever. But you can always check out my music at ogresound.co.uk.
All right. Well, Robin, thank you so much for being my first guest on the show. This has been really cool.
No, thank you very much, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
All right, that was fun. That was my interview with Ogre. Of course, you can check out his music on Bandcamp, also his website. I'll post links to his stuff under this episode. We'll be slowly updating the website. I will slowly be updating the website. This is a one-man operation as I make more episodes. So the website's going to be pretty basic right now, the Beyond Synth website, as I work over the next coming weeks and months to sort of make it, a little bit cooler. In the meantime, I really just want to focus on recording episodes, getting interviews, and putting up content for you guys to check out. And on that note, if you are an artist making some cool music and you want to be on the show, contact me. I'm at Andy Last on Twitter. You can send me a direct message or whatever. And or if you have someone you want to recommend that I should be listening to or that I should do an interview with, drop me a line. I hope to talk to all of you. I'm really impressed by the music that's going on right now, and I think it's super cool. And it doesn't matter to me if you've made, 10 albums or you just have one really cool single. Like, if you're making awesome music, I want to talk to you about it. And I'm going to leave it there. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or feedback or suggestions to improve the show, let me know. Obviously, I am just one dude doing this thing, so there's only so much I can do. But hopefully, you get something out of the program. I hope you do. I did. And yeah, cool. All right, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.